Yo, what's shaking, everybody? It's a breaking news edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Jason Sukumo. He's kind of like sitting in the dark. I don't know what just happened to your lights, Jason.
I don't know what's going on with my setup today, man. I'm having
You
all
are,
kinds of problems.
you're not nearly as worthy of the moment. Derek Williams. That's why we're kind of like breaking into some Monday Night Live video here on the channel. Be sure and like the channel, subscribe to the channel. The Longhorns pick up Derek Williams, a big-time defensive back prospect out of New Iberia, Louisiana, from deep in the heart of the boot. Just to set the table for you guys, because we don't just do breaking news shows for every single commitment. This one's a big one. He is, according to Rivals.com, a high 4-star, number 41 nationally, the number 2 safety in the country, the number 3 player in Louisiana. ESPN has him number 76 overall nationally. On3 has him number 23 overall nationally. And 24/7 has him number 45 overall nationally, which weirdly, Jason, makes the 24/7 composite has him as a 5-star, despite the fact that none of the services rank him as a 5-star as far as I can see. The only thing that matters is this guy's one of the top 70-ish prospects in the entire country. He's an absolute difference maker. Another visitor from this weekend, Jason, and we've been talking on Slack. They might just clean the slate of everybody that visited this weekend. And if you're a Texas Longhorn fan, that has to excite you, thinking about Anthony Hill potentially being one of those players. Jump in here and let me know your initial thoughts on the biggest of the big commitments that the Longhorns have landed since the acquisition of Arch Manning on Thursday.
On our video last night, we went down the list, and Catch, he was the one that I was like, okay, could see it happening, but nah, I said probably not. I think the 13 out of 14 I predicted in this class. And I'm actually writing my 3-2-1 column literally, and I'm having to change it now because things are moving. For a little background for everybody watching, I jokingly said, not really jokingly, I said to Catch, I said, hey, normally I post my column like on Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, sometimes Wednesday morning. I said, I'm going to post it tonight because things are moving so quickly and we get a commitment an hour later. So, Derek's, first off, tremendous pickup for Texas, safety, athletic safety that will, can strike you. He'll bring with some aggressive nature in the secondary. He can be an asset in the return game. I talked to him yesterday, and the reason I said no, I talked to him yesterday. Literally, he was waiting at the airport, and he goes, nah. He goes, I mean, listen. He said it was a great visit, but he goes, I'm going to wait until the fall to take some visits. So I took that at face value. Well, I just talked to him a little bit ago, and he goes, no. He goes, you know what? It kind of hit me on the way home from Texas. He goes, it's just kind of where I want to be. And he goes, I just didn't think it was necessary to wait anymore. So he called the Texas coaches about maybe an hour and 15 minutes ago and told them, which then you saw a bunch of Twitter activity for people who watch social media. Texas coaches were excited. But, yeah, things kind of moved, I think, even quicker maybe than Derek Williams was expecting. But huge pickup for Blake Gideon, huge pickup for Terry Joseph was involved, Steve Sarkisian, of course. So, just a big pickup for Texas in the defensive backfield.
Eric Torres jumping into the super chat saying, let's effing go. Is it me or is it hot in here? Welcome to the South, Coach Kelly. Oh, man. So,
well, let me touch on that real quickly, Catch. I think you might have frozen up on me, but it's funny because I was going back through my comments or my conversation yesterday, and I actually was writing about this before Derek committed. And I was going through my conversation with him from yesterday, and I asked him, I said, where does Texas fit in after this weekend? And he said, they're at the top. He goes, I love Texas a lot. And I wanted to clarify. And I said, do you mean like they're at the top, or are they kind of bunched in with some other schools? And he goes, yeah, I guess they're bunched in with some other schools. So I was like, wait, looking back, was that a slip of the tongue? I don't know. Maybe not. And then I asked him who else was involved or who else was in that bunch that was grouped, the group that was bunched up there. And he mentioned Alabama. He mentioned Texas A&M. He mentioned Clemson. Didn't mention LSU. And I asked him again, I said, well, what about LSU? Are they in there? And he goes, oh, yeah, you can put LSU in there too. So, kind of in hindsight, maybe there were a couple little clues when I talked to him that I didn't pick up on. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it was just a slip of the tongue. Maybe it was just kind of general conversation. But yeah, he did say Texas was at the top, and he didn't mention LSU. So, Coach Kelly, hey, if that's true, you may have us maybe not off to the best start there.
Jason, from my perspective, this is big on several different levels, right? So, number one, from just a talent standpoint, I can't stress it enough. This is one of these guys that falls into the category of a difference maker, separate of most of the guys that you would see nationally. You start talking about a guy who's a national top 50, a top 3 guy in the state of Louisiana. Just from a talent standpoint, that's how you win championships, acquiring guys like Derek Williams, recruits of this stature. Number 2, this feels like a big post-Arch commitment. Like, I don't know. We talked about some of the guys that committed yesterday. Texas might have got a lot of those guys with or without Arch Manning. This one feels like an absolute direct result on the 5 days after Arch Manning commits. This kid commits on the heels of his visit this weekend. And, the Louisiana component of this, we've seen this staff continue to dip its toes into Louisiana and try to make inroads. No way to get around the fact that at this point they've got the number 1, and if we just go off the Rivals rankings alone, the number 1 and number 3 prospects in the state of Louisiana right now committed to Texas. That is a different level of recruiting in the state of Louisiana than we've seen Texas be able to pull off. Really, they've occasionally landed some national 100 type prospects, but to get the number 1 and the number 3 prospects in Louisiana, that is a bit uncommon for the Longhorn program. But if you're Sarkisian, you want it to be as moving forward as common as possible.
Yeah, and neither one, really doesn't sound like LSU is a major player. I mean, I think LSU was involved for Derek Williams, but not really for Arch. And, when Sark hired Terry Joseph, the defensive backs coach, he's got some Louisiana ties. Terry Joseph was involved in the Arch Manning recruitment, I think, kind of laying some foundation pieces there. And you're right, Ketch, you absolutely, and you and I have not talked about this. I mean, this is all happening so quickly. Derek Williams did tell me when I talked to him a little bit ago, he said, hey, I just kind of saw the Arch Manning thing and all the momentum that they are picking up with all the commitments on Sunday. Because I asked him, I said, what changed from the time when you and I talked and then the time when you committed? And he goes, man, I thought about it on the coming home. And he said, he just kind of thought about all the momentum and just wanted to be a part of that momentum. So I think the Arch Manning thing certainly played a part with it. And I think just getting all those commitments yesterday made him realize, hey, man, Texas is building something. He feels like they're building something special, and he wanted to jump on board and be a part of it.
Anthony in the Super Chat says, I think it's easier to say who we're not getting to be able to take this year. We're not quite there yet, but there's no question that Texas, when we talk about what will their next 10 commitments look like, it's got a chance to look a lot, each one by one, a little bit like the Derek Williams commitment. I think that with all due respect to the 4 stars and the 3 stars, the low 4s and the high 3s that Texas was pulling in over the weekend, they're on the cusp of potentially landing Jonte Cook. We'll stay on Jonte Cook watch until there's no longer a Jonte Cook watch, and that might be 2023. I mean, who knows when it's all said and done. He is an interesting character and one.
Yeah, Jonte's always tough to predict. And Chad Gibson, it's not on the screen yet, but on the side it has any word on when Cook might announce. No official word. There's never what I would consider official word with Jonte, but I'll just say it again. In talking to Jonte last week, Monday was, I guess, alluded to as a day to keep an eye on it. So his official visit ended today. So, my guess would be we're on commitment watch for the rest of the night tonight, but it's Jonte, man. That thing could go tomorrow. It could go at midnight tonight. It could go Friday. It could go into July or August with Jonte. You don't know, but we are definitely on commitment watch, possibly for Jonte tonight. And I think that goes for Cedric Baxter as well. There was a lot of scuttlebutt last night and chatter about Cedric Baxter announcing at midnight. I think his birthday, I keep saying, I think his birthday maybe is tomorrow. So we'll be keeping now Jonte and Cedric Baxter just to see if either one of those pop, possibly even today or tonight, I guess.
David Pagan asking these safeties that he compares to. I didn't put this in my column, Jason, because I just didn't want to write it down and be held to it forever. I can't remember ever really comparing any Texas commitment to the guy that I'm about to compare him to. He's got a little Michael Huff in him. I don't know.
Dude, that's exactly what I thought of.
That fast?
No, not that fast, but yeah.
But
same
from
build and just same kind of, they do a lot of the same things. I mean, they'll both be physical. They're both ultra athletic. They can do things in the kick return game for you. So I didn't think that's where you were going to go, but that name did pop into my head. You're much better at those historical comparisons than I am. So
he's better than Michael Huff was at the same stage of their careers. I mean,
Michael Huff was just a freakish athlete, though, man.
And it wasn't really identified until late. I don't know that this kid's that freakish of an athlete, but I think he's in the neighborhood. And from a playing style component, he's a safety that can cover in the slot. He can play down near the line of scrimmage. He's physical for a guy that's 183 pounds and kind of wiry. He will throw his body around, and not like in a reckless way, with his head. He'll body guys up, and really, there's not a lot to dislike about Derek Williams. He returns kicks in a way that makes me think they need to explore that as soon as possible when he gets on campus. He's one of the and on his film, on the few occasions that you see him used on the offensive side of the ball, he shows that explosiveness that we're talking about that will remind you, for us old heads out there, of a guy like Michael Huff, who patrolled the secondary many moons ago, who was kind of a corner and kind of a safety. This guy's kind of in that mold as well. Jason Colby asks, what's the point of the dead period?
Well, I would say to give reporters some sanity, but they will see how that worked. Today's the first day of the dead period, and Texas gets a big commit. I think it's more for the prospects than anything. I mean, yeah, the coaches benefit from them too, and coaches a lot of times take vacations during the dead period. But I think it's more for the prospects, man. They got to have a breather at some point. Everybody's got to be able to take a step back and recharge their batteries. And there are certain windows, obviously the fall is a big window for visits and things. And now with early recruiting, they can do it in the spring. I think actually April, May, and June are available for official visits. Most guys do them in June, but I think it gives everybody a chance to, at some point, focus on off-season training, focus on academics, and maybe just kind of take a little bit of a step back away from recruiting to some degree in terms of, a lot of people mistake. Dead period doesn't mean there's no recruiting going on. It just means no face-to-face contact. But you can still do what Ketch and I are doing right now. You can still Zoom call, and obviously you can call them on the phone. You can text, you can DM, you can do all that stuff. So there's still a lot of recruiting going on. You can do virtual official visits, a lot of recruiting going on, but just no in-person communication or in-person contact with between the coaches and the players.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, dead period's the wrong word for it. Maybe it's we've kept all of the evolution of the dead and the quiet periods under the same headings. Maybe, there's got to be a new word for this, because dead, the old framing of dead period would make you think there's no contact, but it's not like that. And we're going to see a lot of action in recruiting over the course of the next week, the next month. We've seen there's, one of the state's top offensive linemen isn't far away from making an announcement this week. So, I think that, don't even worry about the word dead period, because there's going to be way too much action over the course of the next 30 days or so that, you won't notice that there's a dead period. Kevin jumps into the super chat. Summer prior to his high school year, this is going to be fun. Rank these safety prospects: BJ Foster, Demo, Caden. So I guess that's DeMarvion Overshown. I never thought of DeMarvion really as a safety.
Yeah, he was a safety. Remember, like playing even in the Under Armour All-American game, he played safety.
No, I'm just saying I always viewed him eventually as a linebacker. Okay, Foster, Demo, Caden Stearns, Brandon Jones, Derek Williams.
That's a tough question. That's a good question.
I think I'd go Brandon Jones first.
Not me, but go ahead.
Maybe Caden second.
Mm-hmm.
Then probably Derek Williams, BJ Foster, and then DeMarvion. DeMarvion, it's hard. I'm thinking of DeMarvion as a defensive back compared to these guys. And it's hard for my brain to go back to what I thought about that as a prospect. I think I would have Brandon Jones one. Honestly, he and Caden were both 5-star guys at the very, very top of their classes.
He's saying prior to their senior year. So if you're going prior to their senior year, I probably would have had BJ Foster. I loved BJ Foster as a prospect. Just never, he still flashed at times at Texas, but he made some kind of bonehead mistakes. But I almost would put BJ Foster number one.
How's that guy at Sam Houston State right now?
I don't know to this day. I probably would go Brandon and then Caden. Now, by the end of their senior years, I flipped those. I thought Caden was better than Brandon, but I probably would go Foster, Brandon. Oh, man, that's tough. Caden and Derek Williams, and then Demo would probably be last. But listen, you can't go wrong with any of those dudes, man. I mean, granted, like you said, BJ Foster didn't pan out the way any of us thought he would, but would it shock me, Catch, if BJ Foster had a great year at Sam Houston State and found his way onto some NFL radars? No, not at all.
No, I agree with you there. Boy, that's tough. That's a really good question, Kevin. It's rare that I get one of these rank the prospects questions where I have a hard time answering them, but that's all really close together. And we really shouldn't discredit Derek Williams. I mean, when you watch his junior film, I think it stands up very good compared to the other guys. He's not quite as big and as physical as a guy like Caden Stearns was, or even a BJ Foster, right? I mean, part of what made those guys 5-star players is they felt a little more physically imposing. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things you like about Derek Williams is that physically he's not done developing. And he's a guy that I would imagine when he gets into a college weight room, that 183 might turn into 195, 200 pretty quickly, but it'll all be the good kind of weight for him. He's a kid with a ton of upside. I expect Derek Williams, I've come up with what I think is the Mount Rushmore of things that guys have to avoid to pan out. So when we talk about 5-star guys, Jason, or even a high 4-star, they don't all hit at 100%. I mean, you're going to have busts, but if Derek Williams can avoid injuries, arrests, drugs, and just domestic issues, whether it's like having babies or having a wife or, we've seen a lot of guys over the years.
The downfall for all men, right?
Yes, exactly. And women too. There's this category of like just family stuff that can sidetrack a guy. But if Derek Williams doesn't get hurt and just keeps his head above water and stay away from those other things, to me, this is a guy that's got a very good chance to play on Sunday down the road. And you just can't have enough prospects like that in your program. And the more you stack up, the more wiggle room you give yourself for when a guy does hit one of the big 4 Mount Rushmore things to avoid. It's going to happen. Jake Smith is a perfect example. You just keep on acquiring as many 5-star receivers as possible. Sometimes you miss, but then sometimes you hit on Xavier Worthy in that kind of territory, and you just keep recruiting him. And if you're the Longhorns, what's really exciting about Derek Williams is there is a world out there where they combine him and a couple of other guys, or at least one more truly high-level prospect. If a Malik Muhammad comes aboard, can they make a run at Toviano out of Arlington Martin? Is that if they you start putting together like a threesome like that, then now you're starting to talk about maybe one of the best defensive back classes in the history of the program. Long way away from that. This guy is just the first piece of that puzzle.
Jamal Johnson, I think, who's right now is their longest standing commitment. I think he's had a really good spring, Catch. I think even his stock's elevated too. So
I agree. He's not a guy that I think anybody has to worry about his stock falling over the course of the next few months. Richard's right. Everybody hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We do love doing these shows. We're over 575 strong. watching the show right now. I know it's a little early, Jason. One of the last things I wanted to ask you, though, before we wrap up, did Derek mention any future visits when you talked to him tonight?
Didn't.
That would be the question with him is, does he continue to take official visits?
He didn't catch, and I want to follow up with him because he was in the car and he had just announced his commitment. So it was a pretty quick conversation. And I did tell him, I got a couple comments to get some backstory, congratulated him, thanked him for his time. And I said, hey, I'll catch you later in the week when you have a bit more time. So, so I don't know the answer to that, to answer your question, but wouldn't shock me. He was pretty definitive on Sunday when we talked that he was going to take visits in the fall. Now, does that change now that he's committed? We'll see. Texas will keep working on that, trying to shut that talk down. But wouldn't shock me. But we didn't cross that bridge. But maybe we'll have that update in the War Room on Thursday or something.
He'll have a lot of suitors. It wouldn't shock. I mean, if we were to list, and it's funny because to hear you talk about Derek Williams, he's starting to be one of my favorite guys in this class because he actually answers the phone, Jason.
I'm straight. I haven't called him a lot, but the few times I do, he picks up. I mean, he answered for me yesterday. I said, hey, dude, Derek, how are you? Oh, good, man. I'm just about to board the plane. And I'm like, oh, well, do you got like 2 minutes? He goes, oh, yeah, we're good. And then today I call him and he's in a car and there's all kinds of noise around him. And hey, Derek, hey, I know we talked yesterday, but do you have a couple minutes to kind of get some backstory? Oh, yeah, you're good. Go for it. So, he's one of moving up my list. Yes.
Like Proxy you, like he's one of my favorite guys because every time I hear you talk about him, he's actually answering the phone instead of I can't get this guy to pick up the phone. What is it with these kids?
Yesterday was like a throwback day, dude, because that 14 visitors, and I think I was able to get like 12 of them either via text or on the phone, or Anthony Hill, I talked to his dad. Connor Stroh, I didn't even call because he committed and we already had the commitment story, but I was scheduled to talk to him and his mom. I'll hit them up later. So yesterday was unique in a good way that like all those guys were extremely accessible for some reason yesterday. So knock on wood, let's hope that's a sign of things to come, right?
It's better than when they just ghost you. Hey, I'll call you back later. And then they call you at 3:30 in the morning thinking you won't pick up the phone.
Cough Malik Muhammad, cough. Little does Malik know I'm a night owl, and I was up at midnight on Father's Day when he called me back. So,
just the final thing I'll say on the Derek Williams commitment, because there'll be a lot of conversations now about can Texas go out and get Malik. Recruiting fans are thirsty. You get one big time guy like this, and it's tell us about Malik Muhammad and tell us about the other guys that are still on the table potentially. Getting a guy like Derek Williams to commit this early takes some of the pressure away from, I don't want to make it sound like a bad thing, but when we go back and think about the offensive lineman from a year ago, getting that very first, like at the end of the year, DJ Campbell, as important as he was to that recruiting class and as important as they had been recruiting him for so long, that they had already scooped up Kelvin Banks and Nato and Cam Williams. It helped alleviate some of the pressure of having to get those guys. And great players like to play with other great players. So now that one's in the inner circle, now you would imagine it would, I think, easier for Texas to potentially bring some of these guys on. If we go back to
competing with a guy like Toviano or Malik Muhammad. I mean, they play different positions. Derek's probably going to be more of a true safety. Those guys can play safety, but they're probably regarded more as outside guys. So, you can sell them on, hey, come on, and we can be playing together on the field at the same time as an elite defensive backfield rather than having to fight for spots, with each other, fight for spots at the same position.
12 months ago at this time, you would call and do, the Jalen Gilbos of the world, the Kelvin Banks. There were a number of guys. Always felt like if just one of those guys during the summer had committed, maybe they get a Kelvin Banks early on instead of losing him to Oregon at the time. If you're Texas, where you feel really good about, I think in July or getting ready to go into July, is that you now have a table of commitments that everybody can feel. This is where the arch factor really is significant. a year ago, guys were looking for somebody to make them feel comfortable with the idea of committing to Texas. And when a lot of big time guys waited, it was almost like a sign for them at the time that, no, we're not going to do Texas right now. But with the commitment of Arch, now you're seeing a lot of nationally rated prospects, whether it be Derek Williams, whether it be John Tate Cook, whether it be, there's quite a few of them. The running back out of Florida, the name is
Baxter.
Yes, thank you, Curtis, Mr. Baxter. Thank you. You don't have that issue existing. If they don't commit, it won't be because they're not comfortable with who's already committed. And it is a position of strength that I think Texas finds itself in right now, that a year ago at this exact same time, they couldn't quite get during the summer. And it took them getting some momentum weirdly late in the process that you might not have guessed would happen. So I think when you start looking at where this recruiting class is going, Jason, I think they've got a chance to put together a recruiting class that's better than last year's by a considerable margin when you just look at how many elite of the elite prospects do they sign this year versus last year. Last year, they signed 3 5-stars and high 4-stars in the Rivals network, and we can quibble about Brennan Thompson and a few of the other guys or whether they belonged in that type of stratosphere. This year, I think they've got a chance to have substantially more, and that's the difference between a top 5 class and maybe a top 3 or a number 2 or maybe even a number 1 class, is when you're able to stack national top 50 to 70 players on top of each other, one after another. Texas is in a position where they can potentially pull that off.
Well, that and the difference between having a good, mediocre to good program and a championship quality program, championship caliber program, is stacking those classes 1, 2, 3 on top of each other, right? You can't have those gaps where you do it once and then your next class is ranked 17th. And then you have maybe a 10 and then a 2 and then a 22, okay? I mean, Texas is looking at consecutive top 5 classes. There's no reason to think that that trend won't continue for Texas. That's what you have to do if you want to really compete with the elite of the elite, especially as Texas gets ready to transition to the SEC at some point. So they're off to a heck of a start, man. The recruiting work that the staff has done last class, the end of last class, and really the last 2 weeks with this class has been pretty phenomenal.
No, it's a great point. If you are a member of the Texas Board of Regents or in the athletic department and you were responsible for Steve Sarkisian becoming the head coach at Texas, this type of recruiting is one of the reasons why you made this move. And you got to feel real good. The football pieces still have to fall into place. 5-7 a year ago. We'll see what happens this year. But from a recruiting standpoint, attaboy Texas football staff. I mean, they are they're doing what they would want to do, and they seem to be controlling a little bit of the tempo of what's happening right now inside this region. And it's been a while since we've said that. I think that, this staff may be dictating, along with Texas A&M, let's not get it flipped. Those two staffs together, though, really swinging a big stick in recruiting. Hey, guys, like and subscribe to the channel. Like this video right now if we said anything at all that was an interest of you. Subscribe to the video. It's been a long – I just realized, Jason, I'm wearing the same shirt as yesterday. Like, I haven't changed clothes. I'm a little weary. I'm bloodshot. I've got forced commitment analysis stories ready to go if and when these things go down. I know Jason feels the same way. Like, a good night of sleep will do us well. At the very least, give us a like, subscribe to the channel. For myself and Jason Sukumo, you guys have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll be going live tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. OnWar is going live, I believe, Wednesday night. The Crewcast is tomorrow with Cole Patterson and Jason Sukumo. Lots of content here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football channel. By all means, subscribe to this sucker. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.